Here I have my Proto 2000 Seaboard Airlines USRA 060, and while I've had this locomotive for quite a while now, I recently did a whole bunch of work to it. I'm pretty happy with how everything turned out. Before that, however, why don't I give you a recap about this engine's history, specifically its history with me. I purchased this 060 from eBay a couple years ago for about $170, and that was as a new in-box, new old stock piece. Despite being brand new and in a sealed box, this model had a couple of problems when I first got the thing. For one, both the lights on this model were burned out when I received the thing. I know these Proto 2000 locomotives come with some fairly low voltage lights, and if you don't add resistors or replace them when installing DCC, it can burn the lights out, but they burned out before I even had the chance to run this model on a DCC layout. To give this thing a light, I threw in some random bulb I had laying around, which apparently was too hot and caused a minor amount of damage to the shell, although I think that can be covered up in the future with some weathering, but I'll come back to that later. The second initial problem with this locomotive was the pickup. When I got this model, I simply assumed that this was only a piece with 6-wheel pickup, that the locomotive picked up power and the tender did not, and even though there was a plug going to the tender simply housed all the electronics. Because of that, this locomotive ran very poorly on my club's DCC layout. I tried to run this thing on our branch line, but with numerous switches, this thing just kept stalling at every available opportunity. And again, stay tuned, I'll talk about what was actually wrong with the electrical pickup later on. As I just mentioned, I put a DCC decoder into this locomotive just so I could run it at my club's layout, and for that I just threw in a cheap Digitrax decoder that lacked any sound. With the two aforementioned issues, the lighting and the electrical pickup, along with this model lacking sound, I decided to park the piece until I could properly upgrade this unit to be a nice DCC and sound model. And now, this 060 is exactly that. This model has Tsunami 2, custom lighting, and a good speaker, and we'll get to all those separate components now. I'll start by talking about the custom lighting work I did to this piece. On both ends of the locomotive, I used a small LED, some canopy glue to attach that LED to the existing light guides in the locomotive, and let that sit overnight. I'll overlay a couple pictures here of how both ends of this model looked as the LEDs were being installed. It's not the prettiest with the canopy glue still in the process of drying in these images, but it gives you an idea of what exactly I did. I'll get to the full wiring of this locomotive in a little bit, but for wiring the lights, up front I was able to use the existing plug from the original light. I just unsoldered the wires going to the old headlight and plugged in the new LED with a resistor in tow. I also preemptively installed a resistor on the light in the tender, but I didn't do any wiring with that until I was ready to throw the Tsunami 2 decoder into this locomotive. And if any of you wanted to know the exact hardware I used for the lighting, I got some 603 warm white LEDs and some 1.1K resistors, both of which are readily available on Amazon and other similar websites. Once I was done with all the lighting work, I moved on to installing the Tsunami 2 decoder, which actually came from a pretty neat source. A couple years ago, a good friend and club member of mine was getting rid of a lot of his HO Scale detail parts and decoders as he was making the switch from HO Scale to 2-rail O Scale. Included in that lot of free stuff, among many other things, were some Tsunami 2 sound decoders and a couple of silent DCC decoders. And specifically, some of those sound decoders were for steam locomotives, and that's where the decoder in this model came from. Hardwiring in this new Tsunami 2 decoder was quite a task, but it was made much easier by the way Proto 2000 designed these steam locomotives. On these Proto steam locomotives, there is typically a plug that runs from the locomotive to the tender. This plug connects things such as the headlight, the motor, and the electrical pickups from the front of the unit to the back of the tender where the decoder is kept. But as you can see on the tender, all the wires running to the plug are properly color coordinated. So I did not have to dive into the actual 060 to do any work. All my wiring was limited to the tender. I've taken the shell off the tender just to show you everything in here, and while the wiring does look like a mess, it was very hard to get everything properly organized just because of the weird setup of this locomotive. For one, all the wires have to run well up into the tender through this plug, nearly at a 90-degree angle at times, and they all wind up in this area under where the speaker sits. To make sure I didn't impair the mobility of this plug, I chose to add a little bit more wire than necessary, which meant I had to spool some of it up and use a whole bunch of tape to keep everything contained in here. The pickup system of this model is also quite unusual. I said earlier in the video I had only assumed the 060 picked up power, but that was wrong. I learned that on the tender of these 060s, there are little metallic strips that run on both sides of the unit to pick up power from each side of the truck, and then that power is run through wires up into the tender of the locomotive. The reason my model was having such poor electrical pickup was because the two wires going to the strips were broken. This meant that essentially my locomotive actually was only picking up from the 6 drivers. To prevent this from being an issue, I just simply removed those 2 strips and instead ran wires directly to the top little nubs of the trucks and then wired those into the decoder, which also accounted for some of this wiring nonsense, and you can see one of these little connections right down there. Before I knew the true story behind this locomotive's electrical pickup issues, I chose to buy one of these Soundtrax current keepers just to act as a keep alive for this unit. Even after discovering and repairing this locomotive's electrical issues, I decided to throw the current keeper in this model anyway, just since it's a small piece. And so far, I haven't had any issues with this locomotive stalling after installing the current keeper. It's worked wonders so far, and even at times where my club's layout's power has gone out, the thing has allowed the model to run for an extra 30 seconds or so, which is really neat. Even though my wire organization in the tender is far from great, this locomotive still runs really well. I do intend on trying to fix the wire organization in here eventually, but since this locomotive works and I'm not having any issues with it, I'm going to put it off for now. And one final thing, I just wanted to mention this speaker. This was a piece I bought. It is a Zemo product, and I think it sounds really good, and you'll be able to hear that in just a little bit. After all that, I've got the Proto 060 put back together, and now it's time to go take this thing and run it on my club's layout. While I am really happy with this locomotive, there are still a couple of loose ends I would like to finish up in the future. For one, I need to work on organizing the wiring in the tender. While it works for now, I'm really not all that happy with it, and I think I can make it look a lot better. Second, I definitely need to weather this locomotive. Not only will it help hide this damage just a little bit, these 060s were never perfectly clean. They were always workhorses and always doing something. They were not the mainstays of railroad fleets, and they really didn't get all that much attention. So with all that in mind, I think a good weathering job will make this locomotive look even better. And the final thing I want to do is I would like to add some bullfrog snot to the rear drivers of this locomotive. You may have seen while I was running a train that I only had this locomotive lug about 4 cars behind it, and that's really the max this thing can pull. While that is fairly realistic for one of these 060s, I personally would like my model to be able to carry a little bit more than that. With all the work I've done, I'm not really concerned about electrical pickup at this point. We have the other 4 drivers on the front to pick up power, all of the tender picks up power, and we've got that monster keep alive installed. So I'm really not concerned about taking away the electrical pickup abilities of 2 wheels. So in the end, I am really happy with this 060. I've definitely got a couple small things to finish up, but I think this is going to be a great addition to my fleet of DCC models. And if any of you have any thoughts on this piece or my work on this piece, please do let me know.